Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. I am so delighted to welcome you to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, CastBox, Audible, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. Two really wonderful guests coming to you today. Andrea Torrey Balsara is here to celebrate the great and the small. And later in the show, we'll be welcoming back Monica Berg to celebrate her new book. It's called Tale of the Other Glove. Hey, my friends, we are really excited. Reading with Your Kids podcast is returning to the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, November 9th and 10th at the Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. Let your imagination come to life at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, the ultimate family play experience. Dive into hands-on fun with the hottest new toys and games, meet the inventors behind your favorite products, and even get a sneak peek at what will top holiday wish lists this year. From interactive play zones to exciting competitions and exclusive giveaways, there's something for every member of the family at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. And don't miss the Young Inventor Challenge, where kids showcase their creativity and innovation. Who knows? You just might meet the next big inventor. Join us at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois, November 9th and 10th. Whether you're a game enthusiast or just looking for a fun weekend with the family, the Chicago Toy and Game Fair has it all. And like I said, the Reading with Your Kids podcast will be there, and you may have a chance to be heard on the show. Get your tickets today and bring the magic of play to life. Visit shytag.com for details, and be sure to use the discount code READ, R-E-A-D, at checkout to save on tickets. Hey, parents and educators, are you looking for a fun way to help kids understand their feelings? Check out Felipe the Feeling Frog from the Caring Critter series, written by Zeba McKibben. In this engaging book, Felipe explores his neighborhood and learns that there are no bad feelings, just easy and hard ones that need the right strategies for self-regulation. Perfect for kids ages 4 to 7, Felipe the Feeling Frog teaches essential emotional regulation skills through captivating and relatable stories, as well as adorable illustrations by Denise Walker. Written by a dedicated kindergarten teacher, Felipe the Feeling Frog shows children that all feelings are okay, but it's how we manage them that matters. Felipe and his friends model different emotions and strategies, making it easy for kids to learn and apply these skills. Don't miss this valuable resource for social and emotional learning. And stay tuned for more from the Caring Critters series, including the upcoming Trixie the Thoughtful Turtle. Grab your copy of Felipe the Feeling Frog today and help your child navigate their emotions with a smile. We are about to go on an adventure talking about a new YA novel. It's called The Great and the Small. Our guest is coming to us from right outside of Toronto. Please welcome Andrea Torrey Balsara. Andrea, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Delighted to have you on. And your note to me before, you said that your book, The Great and the Small, is an urban YA, is it fantasy?
Well, it's a fantasy. It's also been described as dystopian. It's been described as an urban fantasy. So because there are animals in it, it's generally called a fantasy. You know, some of the main characters are animals.
Interesting.
Yeah.
we had an intern this past semester who wanted to investigate why there are so many animal characters in books. She wasn't able to get it done, but it sparked some interesting conversations. And I'm wondering why you chose to feature so many animals in your book.
Well, ignorance is bliss. And when I got this idea about 20 years ago, I didn't know that having animals in a YA book was generally, just generally not done. And so I went ahead and I had the idea and I wrote the book. And I guess I figured that I wanted to write a story that I wanted to read. And one of my very favorite books when I was growing up in early adulthood was Watership Down, about a warren of rabbits who have to go searching for a new home, and they get caught in this authoritarian, dictator state, and they have to escape. But what I loved about the story was how rich it was in culture, mythology, and honestly, I know how silly this sounds, but by the end of the book, I felt like I had lived as a rabbit. And so I was like, I love books that take me out of my, the experiences that I've had that give me a brand new lens to look through the world with. And I loved that. And so when this idea came to me, basically, not a pleasant idea in the sense that I had this idea of rats using the bubonic plague as a biological weapon. And I just thought, wow, that would be like if humanity was, squared off against another animal, the rat would be the most formidable opponent because of their history in, all of the plagues that have, taken down millions and millions of people and literally have changed our culture worldwide because of the way that it just, not just decimated, but sometimes destroyed populations in half. So I thought, for a book that is looking at trauma, it's looking at the dangers of blind obedience, the dangers of demagoguery, of authoritarianism. What better kind of way to place it than in a rat colony? And so that's where I went with that.
Wow. I love that you just decided, I don't care what the rules are.
Yeah.
My story. And I really like that. Not that reading with your kids is groundbreaking or edgy or anything like that, but there are a lot of people who say, you can't do that. And it's like, well, no, this is what I want to do. So
yeah,
it goes to you.
I think the rule is you can't do that until someone does it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, it can be done. And I'm like, if I loved an animal story, am I the only one? No, not at all. So I think as an author or a, artist, as soon as we start getting kind of trapped in this idea of of writing for a particular audience or writing for, oh, this will sell or this will be popular, we've gone out of the realm of art and we're now into a business, which is fine. Writing to make money is wonderful. Some people have to do that. But when any writer or artist is doing that, it's not necessarily art. It's more of a, it's kind of a transactional thing. I write this great mystery or something and you buy it and we are all happy. But if I'm trying to express something or explore something that is very deeply personal to me, I have to follow that muse. And I believe that, that's what real art is. And it's not to denigrate the other because I love a good mystery. I absolutely love them, but I would never be able to write that because that's not what's in my heart to explore.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said, talking about blind obedience.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with a parent, and she was telling me how wonderful my kids were. They were older teenagers at the time, I think 16 and 18, and I was so lucky, and I must be so proud. And then she said, I'm so nervous because my daughter is going away to school, to college next year, and that's when kids start questioning their faith. And I thought, well, what a wonderful thing. And she did not expect that response. And I said, if your faith can't stand up to a little questioning, then you probably shouldn't.
That's right.
Believe it.
Well, that is I'm a Baha'i, and I fully believe that each one of us has not only the right to seek the truth, but the responsibility. It really is part of what it means to be a human being, to look at the world and seek truth through your own eyes. Of course, using the wisdom of the ages to guide you. We stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. It's not like we just pop into this world and can make our way. We are all joined and collectively move forward. But I think that it's such a danger for any person, especially a child, to not be allowed to question, to be told, either from a preacher at the front of the church, or by a teacher at the front of a classroom, or by a parent. No, you do as I say. You follow what I said because I said it. It's like, no, that's not how creating a thoughtful person happens. A thoughtful person happens because they have been taught to seek truth, to think for themselves, to analyze what they're seeing around them, and not relying on, a media take on things or the politicians' take on things. But, and some of it's just doing a gut check. Is this aligning with love? When I hear this message from whoever is speaking, do I expand with love? And do I feel like a sense of oneness with others, a call to service? Or do I feel shrunken in fear, in hatred and prejudice? And if it's the latter, then we know that is a lie, what that person is saying. They might not know it's a lie, but it is not truth.
So let's talk about your book, The Great and the Small. Who are we going to meet in this book other than the animals we kind of alluded to earlier?
Well, there are two main characters, and as I said, it's a young adult fantasy. This is not for little kids. It follows two characters. One is Finn, who is a young tunnel rat. He's been orphaned since he was a pup and raised by his very charismatic uncle. His uncle is called the beloved chairman in the tunnels, and he's this very charismatic leader who everybody in the tunnel is equal, in quotes, and yet some are more equal than others, and he's the most of them all. And then it also follows Ananda, who is a troubled teenager. She's 17 years old, and Ananda is dealing with buried trauma. And so she's haunted by dreams. She can't remember what she's dreaming about. And she's still grieving for the death of her grandmother, who recently passed away, who she felt was really the only one who understood her. So she feels like a misfit at home, a misfit at school. And she also has this intuitive sense of communicating with animals, which also makes her feel like a misfit. Like, she has nowhere that she really belongs. Now, Finn has a chip on his shoulder. He's scrawny. He's not that great looking. He's got a limp. And he's trying to impress his uncle. And so when his uncle declares war on humanity, whom he calls the, quote, ugly two legs, and Finn jumps in, and he becomes a lead henchman, leading squads of death rats death squads of rats who've been infected with plague to, basically infect people. So Finn saw what he would describe as a killing chamber where rats were tortured. From a human perspective, it was a cancer research lab. But Finn is filled with this hatred and this rage at what humanity has done in his eyes. So he leads a plague rat squad to the cancer researcher's house. And he ends up getting stuck in a trap. And Ananda, who is the researcher's daughter, finds him and rescues him and secretly nurses him back to health over a period of a couple of weeks as the plague war is raging and people are dying and rats are dying. It's chaos. And yet Ananda could not find it in her heart to kill this injured little rat. So she nurses him back to health. And over that period of time, Finn's eyes are opened. He not only learns to trust Ananda, but he realizes that he loves her and that now he faces this horrible choice. Does he follow his uncle, make him proud, which means killing every single last two-leg out there, or does he choose a new path? And what does that look like? And so he's thrown into this dark night of the soul. And Ananda, at the very same time, these buried memories are just rising to the surface. And she goes through her own hero's journey where she has to decide, because she's fighting, suicide ideation. She's fighting all of these things that happen when a young person is, has gone through something very traumatic and buried the memory. So she has to decide for herself, is she going to live and, get through this dark night of the soul or not? And it's the story of them both and their mirroring narratives as their paths keep crossing back and forth and as they search for the light within the darkness.
Wow. A lot of authors come on and they tell me this idea came to me in the middle of the night. I had to get up and write it down. I'm almost afraid to ask you if this idea came to you in the middle of the night because I'd be terrified with the rats and the plague. And
No, the rat part did not come to me in a dream, thankfully. I've always been fascinated by, what they called the Great Mortality or the Black Death. When it just fascinated me to think about, well, what would that be like if, everyday life is happening and suddenly half of everyone is gone? It just ripped at the seams of societies. They could not cope with the level of mayhem that ensued. And it fascinated me. And then I was trying to, as a writer, I write to understand things primarily. And when I was really little, not really little, I was about 10 or 11. My family and I went through a concentration camp in Germany in a museum. And what I saw there just, it really caused me to think, well, what is good? What is evil? And I've seen baby pictures of Hitler, and he was a beautiful little innocent baby. And so that caused me to think, well, how did he get from there to what he ended up being? Mm. And conversely, how does someone like Nelson Mandela, who went through horrible injustice and horrible things, how does he go from that to becoming heroic and rising above? And so I wanted to write a story about exploring that, like if someone was born in the orbit of, say, a Stalin, were they doomed? Or was there, was there a way out? And if so, what was it? So that was what the first edition really focused on. That came out in 2017. And then a few years ago, the publisher, Commandeer Press, said, we want to do a second edition. Do you want to do any revisions? And I was like, well, anything? And they said, yeah. So I said, okay. So I'd been dealing myself with buried trauma all through my growing up years. I had no recollection of what had happened to me, but like Ananda in the story, it came out through nightmares. It came out through, suicide ideation, through disassociation. And when I was writing the first book, I was really in the trenches, PTSD. It was hard. And I didn't want that to become the story. I wanted to focus on this other question that I had. But it became clear to me after the book was published that Ananda's story was unfinished. And so when I got this other chance to dive back in, I looked at my own experience and I became like an explorer, an archaeologist of my own dark corners and what it meant to grow up through elementary school, through puberty, through high school, through, early adulthood, not knowing this secret that I contained within me. And so that's what the book is about. It's about, these questions that I had and exploring what those mean.
Very, very powerful. I'm wondering if the first edition came out right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as you were rewriting it, perhaps in the midst of the pandemic, did that kind of change your perspective at all or deepen the sense?
Yeah. In a sense, we'd gone through a lot of what I had just imagined before in the first book. So I just made it happen. I made the second edition happen post-COVID. So I was like, why wouldn't I incorporate this new history that we've all lived through in this book? Because it's relevant. And so that was really interesting to incorporate something that was very recent history and even current into a book about plague.
Yeah. Plague is so, I'm thinking we love to ask authors, what kind of conversations a family can have, because we encourage families to read together and co-read books, YA titles, middle grade novels, because I think it can launch so many wonderful conversations. I'm, just imagining in my own head talking about the pandemic we all just went through. A 15-year-old spent, a little less than a third of his life locked down in the recent pandemic. For me, it was just a little blip because I'm almost 100. But for those 15-year-olds, it was really traumatic and a big part of their life. And I'm sure a lot of them are still processing it. And I think, too, if we look back, I know there's a lot of evidence coming out that the Amazon, when the colonists first came over, that was filled with giant cities. And 50 years later, there was no evidence of that. And it was just thought that the Amazon was empty. And now we're finding all these ruins that have been hidden. What other kind of conversations do you think families could have as they're reading The Great and the Small?
Well, there are a number of themes, and every family is going to have their own issues. For example, for my family, if this had come out when I was younger, it might have helped them to recognize the telltale signs that a child has been abused, because it was a family friend who did it. Fortunately, not within my family, and so this was my behavior. My acting out behavior was an outlier, and so you can have conversations about trauma, about in particular the hero's journey, about reframing Our culture is all about instant gratification. It's about fame. It's about, what you own. It's all the things that at the end of the day don't mean anything for your inner peace and inner well-being. What does really affect your inner well-being is if you can frame things that you go through, failures, times when you just fell flat on your face or you felt ashamed, and reframing that in terms of a hero's journey. We always like to watch movies or read books where the heroes go through all sorts of things and then they rise above and they save the day. But when it comes to reframing that in our own lives, we don't say, oh, wow, I'm really, in a heroic moment where I have to just keep pushing through because I really want to give up right now. We don't frame it that way. What we often tell ourselves is, what's wrong with me? Why did it happen to me? I'm a loser. Well, of course it would happen to me. So we become the weights on our feet that drag us down because we don't understand that life, the cycle of growth is about crisis and victory. It's always been that. It's always this cycle. It's like the butterfly who's, very happy as a caterpillar, and then suddenly everything shifts and it's like, oh my, am I dying? And it curls up into a cocoon. It wraps itself in a little, shroud, and it thinks that it's dying as it's transforming. And then eventually it has to flex its wings and force its way out of that shroud, that cocoon, and emerge. And if its wings have been strengthened enough by that struggle, it can fly.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. You're sharing with us that this is, in writing the second edition, you were examining a lot of the trauma that you had. Was it difficult for you to allow yourself to be vulnerable and share that part of you on the pages?
It was. And the very first go round that I did, like the first revision of the second edition, I just kind of put it all on the page, and it was unreadable. Like, it was well written, but it was like, nobody wants to sit down with a book and read about this. Like, nobody wants to read about something horrible happening to a child. So I had to really reel it back. And, so there wouldn't be any trigger warnings needed. Someone could read this and connect the dots for themselves. And that was actually a really creative process. So when I'd kind of written everything down, it was like the whole iceberg was there, all 100%. And then what I got to do was carve back the 90% so that only the 10%, the little trail that guides the reader to, oh, what happened? That was there. And it was really creative and made a stronger book, in the end. And I never reveal what happens to her. The clues are there. And some readers have said, wow, yeah, I get it. And then other readers, I've been really surprised they have no idea what happened to her. Like, I don't know if, and I had to think, should I have written it in? And the answer is no. No, because again, it's, as the author, I have to write the book that I want to write. And then, the readers will come or they won't.
Yeah. It sounds absolutely fascinating. And I'm wondering how you were changed, how after completing and getting this new edition out into the world, how have you changed?
Well, one thing I realize is that pretty much all of us have to deal with shame at some level. And people who've been traumatized as children, there is so much shame. And of course, we run from it. We try to run from it and we try to hide. And I think what's been really a painful but very cathartic, healing, and joyful experience has been to just stand in it and recognize that these are artifacts from a really old event. Mm-hmm. I don't have to feel shame now. I don't have to feel fear now. I'm safe. And so I've just had, it's been part of my healing as well, to be able to not have to hide, to come out and to say what happened to me, and hopefully make a difference for others who, they might not have had the exact same experience of me, but there are so many people who struggle and who feel alone and isolated, and who feel like, they wonder, is there any point? Mm-hmm. And we've all been there, and sometimes we still are there. And it's that process of just, when you're in the dark, there's a saying that goes, when you're in the dark, keep going. Don't stop there, because there's light. There is light. And that's what, I've had to walk through a lot of shame, a lot of fear of being visible, a fear of being seen, a fear of letting people in because of what happened. And it was hard, but now there's light, and now there's something beyond that shame that is joyful. And so it is worth the journey. It really is. And the other part of it that we sometimes forget about is that all of these things that we think are really horrible events, they all carry gifts within them for us. I don't mean the actual, if you've been traumatized or victimized, I don't mean that. I mean that there's always wisdom. There's always the means to get through. And so people who've been through a lot, like someone like Nelson Mandela, who was imprisoned for 20, over 25 years. Mm-hmm. Because of what he went through, he found so much inner strength that now, when you looked at him later in his life, he was illumined. He was an illumined soul because of what he had to find within him to rise above. So it's always a balance. If you've been through a lot, there's a lot that can get you through as well to help you rise above.
We should tell people where they can go to find out more about the great and the small, and also find out more about you.
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.torreybalsara.com. And I'm also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X. And because I also write children's picture books and middle grade, I write for those younger ages under my full name, Andrea Torrey Balsara. This young adult novel and other young adult novels will be under A.T. Balsara, so that it's not, so that you don't have someone trying to read their 5-year-old a bedtime story and they pick up The Great and the Small. That would not be a good idea. But I have other books, like, a book about a guinea pig who dreams of being a pirate, and it's called Greenbeard the Pirate Pig. And so I have lots of other materials on my website that are for little kids. And I would love for people to go there and email me. And I also have coloring pages on there for little kids.
Wonderful. Well, it seems like we would have a lot to talk about in the future. So you have an open invitation to return to reading with your kids.
That would be wonderful. I would really like that.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Great and the Small, the YA Urban Fantasy, from our guest, Andrea Torrey Balsara. Andrea, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Please welcome back to Reading with Your Kids, the author of, or the co-author of Tale of the Other Glove, Monica Berg. Hey, Monica, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. I'm really excited to hear about this book that I understand you co-wrote with your daughter.
Yes, it's our second book that we've written together in a series called On Being. And this one is called The Tale of the Other Glove. We're very excited about the message. And I think it will make a profound effect on children and their parents, actually.
So tell us about the story we'll experience when we read the book.
So Tale of the Other Glove, as the first book, The Gift of Being Different, has Abigail being the heroine. She's the narrator, and it's her stories, her experiences. This one, it takes place in New York City, where she is in a subway station with her babysitter, and it's in the dead of winter, and the babysitter drops one of her gloves on the ground as she's putting them on. She has puts her purse down on a platform and her two gloves, and one falls down, and she goes to pick it up. And as she reaches down, she sees a hand beneath her snatch the glove. So she sees that it's an unhoused person that took her glove. And she said, "Hey, give me my glove back." And he said, "I found it." And she said, "You couldn't have found it because I didn't lose it." And then they had to run off and catch the subway train. So when they got home, she told me the story. And the first thought I had, and I asked her, I said, "Well, why wouldn't you just give him your other glove? Certainly, you're going to discard the one glove you have left because you want a pair. You're going to go out and buy another pair. And for this man, he's cold and he's hungry and he's homeless. Now he has one glove. It's better than a few minutes ago, right?" So, and it's interesting because before we put this down into a story, I lecture around the world, and I asked a bunch of people in different lectures, if it was you, what would you have done? And I asked them to raise their hand. And almost unanimously, most people would not have given the other glove, which was surprising for me because I would have, right? That was the first thought that I had. And we realized that it's a profound story to share with people because Abigail also in the moment was struggling. For her, she obviously felt for her babysitter, and if it was her, she wouldn't want that to have happened to her. And she couldn't understand why the man didn't give it back. And so we had this conversation at home, and I kind of reframed it for her, and that's what gave birth to this story.
Interesting. What were some of the folks who wouldn't give the other glove to the person? What did they share any reasons why?
Mainly that it wasn't right that he took the glove, and that similar to the babysitter, they weren't going to condone the behavior. So one of the messages, and we have a few in the book, is I asked the question to Abigail, would you rather be right or be kind? Because I see very often, I see this with parenting especially, also in relationships, we are so hell-bent on teaching a lesson, teaching them right from wrong, or if somebody has wronged us, that was the wrong thing to do, this was right. And we often lose kindness in that. And for me, I think if we always lead with kindness, we're going to be able to navigate much better, and we're going to feel better about ourselves and our choices in the long run. So that was the big thing for people. They just didn't think it was right that he took it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would probably have been my first reaction. My beautiful wife and I led a ministry to folks living in a shelter for many years. And part of that ministry included a party at Christmas time when we brought in gifts of clothing and gloves and hats. But if I had to be honest with you, even though we worked with those folks and became close to them, I think my reaction would have been, "Hey, give that back to me. That's mine."
I love that. That's the honest answer. But I think that that's why the story is inspiring, because there's so many times that instead of opening our hearts, we close our fists. And again, it's not because we're not good people. We're good people, right? And I'm sure we want to do the right thing, but it can get muddied, and I think that it's important to put ourselves into somebody else's shoes, even if we can't understand them. So that's kind of how the story progresses. Abigail has this epiphany where she realizes that he was once a child and he had a home and he had food on his table and he had, somewhere to go to. And she doesn't know his story or how he got to where he is, but she doesn't need to know in order to offer kindness and see him as human, which again is, I think, a profound message.
Yeah. And going back to the person who was unhoused, one of the things that we learned and experienced, in this ministry that we ran was pretty simple. For the most part, it was just once a week going in and sharing desserts that were made by the people in our church. And that was nice. And the guys loved the cakes and the cookies and the ice cream. But what they loved more than anything was what you just said, being seen. Mm-hmm. Having someone look them in the eye and what would you like? And here you go. Have a nice time.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that a lot. And the interesting thing I find is that that's what everybody wants at the end of the day. Every single person wants to be seen and heard. I hear this a lot when I work with couples, why don't they just see me? Why can't they hear me? And then I imagined, for an unhoused person, they really often share that they feel invisible because for the most part, nobody's looking at them, certainly not in the eye. And of course, it's scary sometimes. People are unhoused for so many different reasons. Sometimes it's mental illness. Sometimes they've just fallen on their luck. Sometimes it's a drug addiction. Just many, many reasons, right? And I think that sometimes when it's hard for us to see things, we just pretend not to see them. So this book awakens that as well.
Where did your passion to spread kindness and to teach kindness come from?
I came into the world with a desire to help people. I didn't understand or identify how I would do that until I found my own spiritual practice at 17 that really guided me. But deep in my core, what really, really fulfills me and what lights me up is to help people make sense of their life, find purpose, joy, remove pain, find fulfillment. And it's always done, first of all, if you open your own heart, right? And then you see somebody and then you offer a kindness to them. Because I realized early on, we don't realize we're so in our own heads for the most part that we think people are maybe judging us or they're looking at us. And in fact, everybody's fighting their own fight. And when I realized that, I thought, well, I'm going to try to bridge that, right? If I'm vulnerable about my experiences and I share them, then I think I can help give permission to people to do the same and kind of create that connection. So for me, it's really such a big part of my existence. My days are really focused on that. And especially if I'm not having a good day or something's going wrong, I'll actively scan the streets of New York City and see if somebody needs help, rush to open a door or just to put myself out there because I know that that's the formula for joy and happiness in my own life.
Yeah. When we're talking to our kids, how do you think what's the best way that we can help our kids learn to be kind and have empathy for others?
Modeling. One of my favorite quotes is that children have never been really great at listening to their elders, but they've never failed to imitate them. And I see so many times, we don't realize it, I think. Often we might have our own frustration or, again, be in our own head or having a bad day. And let's say we go to the bank and the bank teller is getting every single thing wrong, or you're at the grocery store and the person in front of you is taking way too long for no good reason, right? And we might mutter something on our breath, or we might say something that's unkind. They're watching, they're paying attention to every single thing. And conversely, when we do go out of our ways to go and help people who are in need, I've seen it. I've seen my kids' eyes light up and they sit up taller and they're proud. And it's not just they're proud of me as their mother, but it makes them want to do that as well, right? So I think that's the number one thing. Watch yourself, the thing that you're seeing in your child. Maybe you see your child not being as empathetic as you'd like, or being a little bit of a bully. Instead of lambasting them, look in yourself and say, okay, is there a behavior that I'm modeling for them that I could change? How can I improve it in myself to inspire them.
Yeah. You know, the imitation, that's so true. When my son was very young, probably just learning how to speak, I was taking him to the doctor, and somebody cut me off on the road, and it was very close, and I was very upset because my son was in the car, and this person was so irresponsible driving, and I just said one word. It was not a good word. It was a word, began with F. And thankfully no one got hurt, but as I drove down the road, all of a sudden my son was in the back seat just singing that word over.
That's funny. It was very immediate, huh?
Absolutely immediate. And he was so happy saying it. So it wasn't the same tone that I used.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
It actually reminds me of a story. When I was still in college, I worked in a preschool as well. I love children. And it was my first exposure to like really young kids. And this one, he was role playing. He was probably like 3.5, one of my favorites. He was the cutest. And he's on a fake phone. And he's saying, get off the effing phone. But he's saying the word, get up. And he's screaming it over and over again, like enraged. And I was like, what is going on? We realized he was modeling his father. That's what his father did at home. But like to see it out of this like adorable 3.5, and he's fully enraged, but it's just a game for him, right? He's just modeling something that he saw, but it's the same point.
Yeah. What's it like writing with your daughter?
It's so fun. She's definitely my muse. I've written other books. This is my first children's book series. So to do it together is really powerful. But I love the way we're very similar. She's the youngest of 4 that I have. And she reminds me of me when I was little. So sometimes when we have these conversations, we morph into one character, or I'll share parts of my childhood and we'll add it to our stories, or she'll come up. But I just love the way that she views the world, you know? And I also love that she is comfortable enough to tell me how she feels very openly and authentically, even things that are uncomfortable. And she feels safe for me to hear her. And I know that everybody doesn't have that relationship with their parents. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think because of that, we're able to share stories and inspire people in a different way.
Yeah. Was there anything in particular that you did when Abigail was younger that helped her feel safe to share ideas and thoughts with you?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think I always encouraged her to tell me how she feels, and that there was nothing she could say to me that would change the way that I feel about her. I also, because I think she's the 4th, and because I've done a lot of work as a parent, but also on myself, I didn't have any expectations of her to be something or to do something. I just really saw her and I heard her, right, every step of the way. So I remember there was a period of time where she'd have these like outbursts where she'd have a tantrum. And I don't think I handled it this way with the other kids, but every time she would do that, I realized and I could see that she really just needed a hug. And it's not for all kids, but for her uniquely, because I was watching her so much, right? So I'd go over and I'd get on my knees and I'd hug her, and she would just melt, and then she'd be able to express what she wanted, right? So I think that's part of it. And I think also with our first book, The Gift of Being Different, that's about finding your superpower, and hers is dyslexia. So when we found out she had dyslexia, that was a whole other process of us kind of talking about it, discovering it together. I never made it about me. I think that's the other key thing. Anything she tells me, I'm not hearing it and then saying, okay, you know, oh my God, I'm afraid that's going to be her future, or, oh my God, what does it say about me as a mother? I never go to that place. It's, okay, this is what she's going through. Let me research it, and then let me come to her with some options and then really talk to her, but it's not about me. Mm-hmm. So I think all of that allows for space for connection and openness.
You know, you just mentioned, when you were presented with a problem from her or an issue, you would do some research. And I think one of the things that all parents at one point or another make the mistake of is thinking, I need to deal with this immediately.
I need to fix it. Yeah.
Fix it. You know, instead of sitting back and saying, okay, well, let's talk about this tomorrow. Let me have time to think. And I think that when our kids see us being thoughtful, I think that if they were going to be defensive in us going and talking to them, that kind of melts away, and we can deal with the issue a lot better.
Yeah, I think parents are well-meaning for the most part, but some people haven't dealt with their own childhood issues or trauma or pain. And I think it comes from a place of, I need to protect my child. I don't want them to experience what I went through. And so often, unintentionally, we give them feedback, or even just by our body language, that, we're worried, or this is a concern, or what are we going to do, or there's anxiety around it. And so children notice that, again, they watch everything, and then they're like, oh my God, maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe I shouldn't talk about this, or maybe I should ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, right? There's so many different ways. I always say, research everything, be informed, and then from a place of knowledge and information, look what your options are, and then present them. But first, hear the child, remove yourself, do the research, and then share.
Yeah. One of the things the kids are dealing with these days is, of course, bullying in school. And it's so easy just to label kids, oh, he's a bully or she's a victim. How can we help our kids who might be the target of a bully also understand that the person that is hurting them may be hurting themselves? And while they need to stand up for themselves, maybe there's a way to have some grace towards that person that's hurting us.
1,000%. I really like this question because I know a lot of adult bullies also. Some bullies stay forever, and
sure.
You see them in your workout class or in your, wherever you do things, but it does exist. And a bully actually, I think, feeds off of knowing that they got you, right? And they like that energy. So often sticking up for yourself, unfortunately, doesn't work if you're standing alone, right? You need a group. And I think that this really opens the conversation into empathy, which is the main theme of the book, and that to really empathize with somebody, you have to put yourself in their shoes. So even if somebody's being bullied, right, and we want to give advice to all those other people that notice the one being bullied, put yourself in that person's shoes. If it was you, what would you want in that moment? And go offer that, right? For the person that's being the bully, I think if the one that's being affected, you could say, okay, let's ask these two questions. Why do you think they're behaving that way? And what do you think is the reason behind it, right? So when you kind of say, and you look at the child, well, then you have information. Maybe they have a rocky home life, or you can see that they're really jealous or full of lack or whatever it is. And when you are able to have some more information, it doesn't make the behavior okay at all, but you can kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. You still want nothing to do with this person, but you're able to see that it's not about you at all, which I think is the key, especially for children, because what happens, the ones that are targeted, it's like, oh my God, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. I'm flawed, and this is why. And it's not. It's often that your light is so bright and it's too bright for them. And so you're the target of that.
Yeah. Really powerful. I love this. I think it's so important to teach our kids to be kind. And also I think it's important to help our kids understand that even tiny acts of kindness can really change somebody's life.
Exactly, which is another theme in the book. So at the end, Abigail and her babysitter, they go and they buy a pair of gloves for this unhoused person. And then they see the next day that he's shared the gloves with one of his friends. So now he has one glove again. So then they go and get another pair. And you think that, okay, is that really going to make a difference? But you don't know if that action that they did moved the unhoused people so much that they believe that they could have a different life. You don't know what that one act, it's really a ripple effect. And I think far too often we underestimate the power of our own influence. We're not sure really what it's going to do or if we can make an impact. But really, one thing, one step always leads to something else positive.
Yeah. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the tale of the other glove, and also find out more about you, because there's a lot of things that you're offering to folks.
I do, yes. So you can go on Amazon. It's out now. Tale of the Other Glove. Order your book. It's a great book to get for the holidays. It's a winter theme, so it looks great. You can bundle it with the first book as well. You can find me at rethinklife.today. That's my blog. My Instagram is Monica R. Berg 74. And I have a masterclass on relationships called Rethink It. You can get that at the blog as well. And my husband and I have a podcast called Spiritually Hungry, so check that out as well.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Tale of the Other Glove. It's the latest book from our guest and her daughter. Our guest has been Monica Berg. Thank you so much, Monica.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. We hope you'll join us for the next episode of the show. In the meantime, we'd love it if you connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at JetleyMagic on X. Please be sure to visit our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. You can find all of our Drawing With Your Kids and our STEM is Family Fun videos, and you can also listen to many episodes of the podcast. If you want to listen to every episode of the podcast, of course, check out your favorite podcasting platform or go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Right there in the splash page, you can listen to the last 2 or 3 episodes that we published. In addition, you can also click on the button there that says listen to all of our episodes, and you can go there and check out all 2,000 plus episodes of Reading with Your Kids. If you're an author, please be sure to click the author's click here button at the top of readingwithyourkids.com to find out how you can be a guest here on the show. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of Kidlit fans all around the world about your fantastic book. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our wonderful guest, Andrea Torrey Balsara. Please check out The Great and the Small. And Monica Berg. Please be sure to check out The Tale of the Other Glove. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Raylene Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.